So welcome everybody to the Rave Cartography. This is a free open house designed just for people who are interested in perhaps taking Rave Cartography, either for personal or professional reasons. So I'm going to share my screen right now. When we're looking at authority, authority is a rising up of your personal process and the spirit that is within you, the home of you, who you are as a being. There you are. Oh, good. I'm glad you're here. Yay. Okay. So what you are here to be and to do in this life all hinges around whether or not you can allow life to move through you and the deciding factor be correct in alignment with your authority. And honoring your strategy, the types each have their own strategies. There is a unique kind of authority that is designed to flow through you in order for you to be moved into communication or action. All right, so all of us can be an outer authority for another person. All of us have the potential to be able to interrelate or be interdependent with each other. In fact, we need each other. Each of us has a unique piece, a part to play in this whole of totality. And when you are in alignment with your authority, then you experience the spirit that moves through you. That spirit is unique to each type. As a general frequency, the reflector is here to have this experience of surprise when they're evaluating what they're seeing in the outside world. Who's different? Who am I? Can I be myself over this time frame that is deeply attuned to the lunar process? So the reflector is here to evaluate all and be an objective observer of all, the way that they are experiencing. And when they do that, they honor their lunar authority. They experience delight and surprise with what life brings them, with what they can be from moment to moment to moment. All right, so that's the attunement of authority for a reflector, their spirit, surprise. Now let's take a look at how different that is from projector. Whereas the reflector has this aura that is Teflon and is designed to sample, the projector is designed to penetrate so deeply into another person, it's almost like they're eating them, and be able to advise that person on how they can be successful. It's a focused process on just that other person, one person at a time. Reflector, totality, cosmology, connected to everything, having this perspective of inconsistency. That's what's unique to a reflector. Projector, now we're looking at focused, one person, and having this ability to go in so deeply that they can help that other person see who they are for their ultimate benefit and success. And when that projector is successful at helping enough other people, that's when they get their own recognition and success. So if they wait for clear invitations of who they really are, and an invitation is something that comes with an exchange of energy. Invitation isn't like, oh, I can see that you're worried about what to do. So why don't you go move to the Bahamas, Laveena, because your place is on fire. That's not an invitation. An invitation comes with a deep recognition of the individual, an exchange of energy. And then for me as an emotional projector, if I wait for clarity, I will get a sense of this being correct for me to engage in. And then I will get this experience of success. So the success that comes for projector is not about their personal success first and foremost. They are going to get the other person successful, and that's where the spirit gets to rise up, this feeling of being used, and not in a bad way, but this is my purpose. I'm here to help enough other people who recognize and invite me into success so that overall the process can be moved about and guided about correctly. And all of us have a greater and greater levels and experiences of success. And that's the spirit of the projector, success. Next piece. As we look at your people the types of people, the 4 types of people that you're going to encounter as a generalized frequency. There's the non-energy types, which we just described, reflector and projector. And there's the energy types, the manifestor and generator, who each will have their own authority. And the way that they're experiencing their spirit is through this ability to either generate or manifest in a way that brings them satisfaction or peace. So the manifestor, who is able to initiate and bring to the forefront some kind of impact, to get the ball rolling, to get things started, those are the people who are going to align other people down the road that they either recognize and invite, that they inform, that they initiate. They're going to get the ball rolling. Perfect example, Uru Hu, who innovated this new system out into the world. And then the projectors are here to study the system, master the system, guide and advise the process. And the generators are the one who are here to actually be satisfied with doing the doing however they are asked and however they respond. So that's the interrelationship of those types. And the reflector is here to be the one to evaluate how it's all going. And really, if you want a reflector as a role, what they're here for, they're the ones that you should have at the center of your business or community, evaluating who's making what monetarily. Okay, so you have your spirit of peace for the manifestor, operating in peace. And when I spoke to Linda Bonnell at the International Human Design School, I've talked to her personally and professionally over the years. One of the professional conversations we had was I asked her about what Uru Hu was like. And she said, you know, towards the end of his life, there was this deep, deep, deep sense of peace. You can see the difference between, in here especially, between the very early recordings of Ra, where he came across very aggressive, very angry perhaps, and the end of his life courses. If you listen to one of his very last public courses was the 64 Material Ways. So much humor in that. Just laughing my butt off a lot of the time because there was a lot of lightness in his spirit. There was a lot of energy of being at peace. And when you listen to the last classes that he taught were like psychology and OC16 and BG5, those are all very different frequencies than the classes that came up at the beginning. There's a very big shift that happens from the angry manifestor to the peaceful manifestor who is here to innovate. And then generator, definitely not the last or least, the last that I'm mentioning here. Generators have a consistent access to this frequency of energy that is here to get things done in a satisfying way so that they can know who they are. And most of them have this as an authority. Their sacral response is the deciding factor. The buck stops here, there's their authority. Okay, and when they have that, they experience satisfaction. They get to discover who they are. So when you're talking about these spirits, the spirit of the generator being satisfied, deep satisfaction, just dropping into bed at the end of the day, completely happy with who they are and how they spent their energy, and the manifestor operating in alignment with peace so that they can innovate freely, the generator so that they can build, the projector so that they can advise and move the process along to success, the reflector so that they can evaluate and be surprised and delighted with life. That is their point of their authority. Like what the point is to follow your own authority and to be your own authority. In the nature, your genetic nature is what's defined. Nurturing is openness. Nurture can overwhelm nature because the openness is where we get conditioned. So in order for your conditioning to operate correctly, because there is correct conditioning, you have to have conditioning, otherwise we would be stagnant creatures. You have to have the correct kind of conditioning. And strategy and authority brings the correct kind of conditioning into your life. We are both nature and nurture. So in the conditioning and the openness is where we have wisdom. It's where we can profit from our awareness, from our interaction with our advice that we give to other people. So in the openness is where we kind of like puzzle pieces, where you lock into another person, where you have this capacity to now complete streams of awareness and streams of, let's say, the stream of the capitalism right here. I'm going to go to somebody who has, Kenneth, you have a big piece of that. If you come into contact with a 5432 and then there's another person who has a 2145, the three of you in conversations will be able to figure out a way on the material plane that makes profit, that makes money. That is something that we teach in foundations. In BG5, you go deeper into how does the group work together correctly so that everybody can make more money. How can they be homogenized and learn how to do somebody else's job, perhaps, how to amplify. We in alpha analysis, when we talk to people who are CEOs or group leaders, we tell them to go after the conditioning, get that, and use it, amplify that other person's leadership channels. In human design, we do not tell you to deliberately go out and seek conditioning. So can you see the difference between the two tracks? It's very tricky over at the Institute, where you have to be able to recognize how to correctly use this for you. It's going to be different for everybody. So in studying human design, we recognize the oneness of the totality, that we are individual puzzle pieces that fit into each other and our interactions with each other in very particular and unique ways. You can discern whether or not someone is healthy from you from following your strategy and authority. The whole point is to honor your nature. In human design, we live in the world of nurture, and we recognize what happens to us when we're conditioned by the other. Is it a conditioning that gives me, here as an example, safety and security? My partner has a defined splenic center. When he was gone and the fires were, coming onto the news, brand new fire where I couldn't hear from him for days, well, not days, it felt like days, but it was a whole day. I didn't hear from him, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know where he was, and he had gone into the fire, and I don't know, whether he got caught in that or not. I was terrified. When he came back, I started to calm down, started to realize, okay, I'm okay, I'm safe, I have everything I need right here. I don't have to escape to some unknown because I wasn't invited to go to a particular place yet. It wasn't clear. So conditioning is correct if the relationship is correct. It cannot supplant your authority, though. The authority is where the prana of your life is expressed, and you take in prana or energy in the openness when it's not distorted. So distortion in a, did I put myself here? Yeah. Distortion for me is fear in the splenic center, fear for my survival. So I was in fear. I was packing up all my stuff going, okay, I got to get out of here. And told him on the phone, somebody invited me. I think I might need to get out of here, like right away. Said, we'll talk about it when I get home. And now I feel safe. And now I know we'll have enough time to be able to plan an escape now that I've got everything packed up. So that's good conditioning. I feel safe when he's around. We are not separate from each other. The illusion of our unique perspective in these vehicles, and that's what I explained to you over time through LYD, ABC, and cartography. As soon as you guys, I feel that I recognize you can handle how these all these pieces fit together, I show you the proof that we are not separate entities, even though it looks like we are cells within a totality, right? So we can have the experience of being our own authority if, thank you, Kenneth, we can have the experience of being our own authority if we are aligned to the correct way that we are here to be nurtured and protected and honored. If we're honored for who we are, then we are supported in being our own authority. And that's one of the reasons that this is not something that is required in rave, in teaching anything to anybody. It's just the requirement is classes. Oh, sorry you had trouble getting in initially, Shannon. The requirement is just these classes I'm doing. I've created different groups private groups for my clients and my students so that you can be supported in honoring your own authority, because oftentimes we're very isolated. This is a very unique way of thinking. The biggest example is Ra says, you have no choice, love yourself. And the world outside says, no, we are all free will. We can do anything. We can be anyone. Over here, you have no choice, love yourself. Very, very different. So having the support structure of other people by making friends in these groups or by going through these classes as students and sharing your experiences. So that's why the reason I do this now is the first class, I'm shutting it down so that we don't have long conversations. We'll do that in the classes beyond, because that's where we really get to experience what it's like for each of us having our own unique perspective and seeing that perspective expressed through our being is one of the ways that you really learn how to be who you are from as a projector, recognizing it in the other, or maybe as a generator, being inspired by somebody else's example, having the relationships. And that's one of the ways that I'm here to help my tribe figure out what works, because in the openness is where we have a wisdom potential. And my wisdom potential is being able to establish relationships. So I do this to establish the relationship not only between me and you, but you and other students. And my students have gone on to partner in business or create their own, experiences together, study groups and whatnot, so that you can be supported in this journey. All right, so going into the chat, thank you, good move. And the magnetic monopole exactly gives us the illusion of the separateness. The monopole is the driver. So what we're looking at in nature and nurture is that we, as our nature, what we broadcast, the definition in our chart that is expressed out through our design, it is what is part of making up the consciousness field. Because let's imagine that there are, millions and millions of neutrinos. For every square inch, they're coming through all the time, trillions actually, all the time. Each one of you is getting penetrated by those neutrinos, and they are going out into the environment and coloring other people. They're conditioning other people. They're going out into the star field, into the great beyond as well. It doesn't stop at that other person. It keeps going. So when we're in correct balance with our nature and our nurture, we're not taking in energy and distorting it through fear, through rage, through bitterness, through anger, and through disappointment, through frustration. We're not having that experience of distortion. We're actually helping expand consciousness for all of reality, because we can see clearly with our awareness. Have you ever seen how when you're frustrated or when you're angry or when you're bitter or when you're disappointed, you cannot perceive clearly because your thinking is clouded by perhaps emotions or by whatever upset? And so your frequency is off. You are not expressing the spirit of your unique genetic potential. When you are being your nature and allowing the nurture to also be part of what's feeding your nature, there is a wholeness to the way that you operate in the world, and there is a consistency with which you show up, and that consistency is your definition, which is triggered by honoring your strategy and following your inner authority. Okay? The not self mind itself, as a conditioned mind, will want to try and be your authority and will distract you as much as possible away from your definition. It's not that it's trying to be doing that on purpose because it has some evil agenda. It cannot help it because it is conditioning. It is not its own cognizant force. The conditioning is simply mental tapes inside of your head that is repeated from the experiences that you took in and distorted and there was pain there. And so your mind is trying to put up blocks to prevent that pain from ever happening again. There are two ways humans are motivated. They're either motivated by their conditioning and running away from pain, fear. That's a strong motivator. That's what gives us our survival, right? If we're going to get eaten by something, then we're usually going to run. And so there's a deep conditioning, the not self mind, whenever we get that trigger to automatically go to the not self to try and resolve the fear, the pain, the anxiety. And so the mind, if you're identified with the voice inside of your head about yourself, it is powerful and thinks it knows best, and it's masquerading as you. It's not really you. None of us are our minds, because the mind is only this part of you, the conditioned part, the stuff in black on the right-hand side. That's all it is aware of. And then the openness is where there's amplification and distortion. The openness is where we think we have control. Anything is possible out in the openness. Yeah, anything is possible, except that you're utilizing aspects that are not unique to your nature. And so no matter what it is you achieve or accomplish, it does not resonate inside with the true success, that, as an example, success or satisfaction or peace or surprise that you could have gotten if you would follow your strategy and authority. Okay? So the passenger mind inside the head, before you come to human design, thinks that it is control, rather than this body that is actually in charge. The body is in charge. More and more, as you go through the experience of deconditioning over time, you recognize this inherent truth, and your mind cannot push you anymore to freak out about things, and that, you know, the bitterness and the anger and the frustration and the disappointment no longer have such a hold on you. They don't stick. They don't get amplified so much within you that now you are this terrible, anxious mess that's taking all these pills and can't handle their life and is freaking out all the time and disappointed and wanting to end it all. Things change over time because your frequency changes. The way you make decisions is more in alignment, and they just follow through naturally and inherently because you're following your body, you're following the vehicle. The mind says anything to try and control, change, and fix. It will always, and this isn't always, guys, it will always think there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with you. It will always judge, measure, complain, and compare and distort what it experiences from the outside world in order to strategize so that you can be safe, or you can be important, or you can be, generating or manifesting, or whatever it happens to be, wherever that openness is coming from. That mind cannot be trusted. The mind is the illusion. It's not just under the spell of Maya. Your mind inside your head about yourself is an illusion. It is built on the openness. The openness is not you. And it's never embarrassed by its actions. When something doesn't work, your mind will usually suggest some equally ridiculous way to deal with the decision and convince you, oh, this is why. It's that person's fault this went wrong. It's not my fault. Let's just do this thing instead, rather than waiting for recognition and invitation. Okay? So what you're looking at in this next piece here, the impact of the not self-mind is that, and if you've taken LYD, you know this, that the openness has a spokesperson inside your head. Those open centers make up stories about why you should do this or that. And the filter, we can clearly talk to them, the not self-mind stories. If you know your gate activations, then you can build up sentences that will describe for you or for another person what the mind is trying to tell them, because it's homogenized, it's not specific, it's not focused, because it's conditioning, there's openness. So as an example, let's go here. Everybody's getting conditioned right now with this response mechanism of the spleen, that this is the way we're going to be preserve and protect our tribe. So you got complete openness there, then that's the dominant way your mind is going to think, because you're amplifying it. If you're distorting it, you're thinking, oh God, these are the right values. I've got to have these values. This is the way for me right now. And then the transit moves and it's gone. It's not consistent. You can't trust it and something changes. So that's why we always go back home to strategy and honoring authority for your decision-making process, because each open center has a basic not self behavior that you can further delineate by how you describe those gates. And those behavior come from the experiences of the past that caused conditioning. The not self strategy over the year, the adaptive strategies that you put into place because of the pain of whatever suffering you perceived. It's not even suffering of the body. Your mind perceives problems and fault and shame and blame and guilt. And those life experiences and the interpretations of those experiences, the story, the false belief systems about what you've been thinking about yourself all your life, that's what's causing the pain. And if you make decisions based on that, that's where you get lost. Okay, so one of the things that I do when I'm describing things for you is I'm not just teaching only human design anymore. I know that there's neuro-linguistic programming in there, and there's the biology and psychology in there, just because I'm a right being. And that's a lot of the things that I've studied over the years. Being able to recognize what the practical values of another path, gate 23, it's my Jupiter being able to assimilate and be able to explain what it knows in a way that's really insightful, in a way that's really unique and individual. It's part of my definition. So when you're taking classes from me, sometimes they go a bit longer. Usually they're about an hour for the content and then a half an hour for Q&A. Today we did something a little bit different where we started with some dialogues, not dialogue, but because you weren't unmuted, but some Q&A, and I described for you the program. In the future, there's going to be, for all the rest of the classes, so for the next 12 classes beyond this one, you're going to get that experience of going into the just now transits. So what's happening right now, we connect up with each other and how the week's been. If there's any questions also on the material that was covered last week, something new came up and you have some burning desire to understand how this works before we move on to digesting new material, that's the next step. So we check in, transits, and any questions, and then we go into new content. And at the end of the new content, there's usually time for Q&A after that. So we're going to go into that as soon as I finish this one more concept, and that is your susceptibility to conditioning. When you have a lot of openness in the design, meaning there's a lot of white spaces. All of us have white spaces, even if everything's colored in, but some of us have more white spaces than others. You know what I mean? There's lots of unconscious definition as well, lots of red definition. Or maybe there's a lot of undefined centers with dormant potentials, hanging gates that are susceptible, looking for conditioning on the other side, thinking that they have to have that conditioning on the other side. So this is susceptibility or openness, vulnerability, we could say. The reflector is an example of weak, quote unquote, weak life force. Now, it's not to say that this is good or bad, it's just different, meaning that they have an inconsistency, a deep inconsistency about how their design functions. In order for them to experience life, they need the hookup. It's happening all the time. The conditioning is coming from the transits primarily with this kind of auric type, because they are very selective. This is sampling and sorting. They have their own kind of mechanism for keeping their aura not as conditioned by people. It's the transits that really impact these people. So it's not good or bad. It's just different ways to experience and be in life. So in your designs, we can take a look at this now. You have a lot of openness. You have more of a susceptibility to conditioning. In the openness is where you have wisdom and potential to evolve, a potential to gain clarity about what the emotional wave really is over time with experience and wisdom to know when to confront or what needs to be confronted or how to confront, again, over time, over your life of conditioning of your life experience. So we have openness everywhere where there is that place that we're here to be nurtured. We, as a student of life, the experiences. So in the openness as a center, as an energy hub, there are particular ways each of you are here to learn about this life experience. You're going to school in the life movie of identity, direction, and love, or you're going to school in the life movie of having an inherent ability to recognize value in others, not you, in others. You know that you are limitless, that you are unlimitedly worthy, infinitely worthy, if you have an undefined heart center like this over time with awareness of who you are for yourself, as an example. And then you have the ability to go to school in the realm of emotions, and the realm of work and generating and manifesting. Those are your wisdom potentials. These are your, if you're looking at a business, these are your primary profit centers. Each of you has an ability to profit from an awareness of how this works for you in your chart. Okay, so that's one of the things that I teach you when you get to Living Your Design guide training. I will tell you how you're here to profit. Yes, you are infinitely worthy because you exist. Life would not be what it is without your existence. The simple fact that you exist means that you're worthy. Now, with this susceptibility to conditioning, what happens here with a consistent life force, you're seeing in this chart lots of colored in centers. So we can see then that there's less open centers to be conditioned and homogenized in general. However, when there's a lot of conscious definition like this, there's still openness to conditioning because every single channel can be amplified and distorted. Gate activations, line activations that are not inherent within your design can still be taken in and experienced. So some people have a lot of life force coming out of just one center. My teacher mentor Darshana has a very defined root and spleen, 2 channels and lots of repeated activations in this root center. When you're with her, you can feel this grounded drive, this stamina, this security and safety. To me, it's like, oh, I can be safe with her. She feels like mom energy, you know? Everybody's going to relate differently to everybody else because you're going to take in and associate perhaps different energies relating to how you've been conditioned in the past. So for me, she's got an 18. My dad had the 18. She's got a 27. My mom had the whole channel. So it gives me this energy of familiarity and safety and security. When you operate from your own life force, your strategy and authority, you're going to get what you need in this life, what's correct for you, and it's all okay. What happens over time, and this is the last concept before I see if there's any questions. What happens over time as you live this experiment is that you believe the story inside of your head less, and it has less power to try and trick you into action, into being motivated by your distraction, your transference, your distraction of how you see the world, and your transference of how you are perceiving what you should do and why. Okay, so over time, there's this ability to let go of the voice inside of your head. As you move through this life experience, it opens you up to seeing things clearly rather than this perspective of distortion. So that's my hope for you. If you're choosing to take these classes with me, is that you're getting completely immersed in this either weekend course or this day-to-day experience, by participating in the groups, by coming to weekly classes, and continuing your study and your exposure to the material. Because the more that you're exposed and you contemplate, and you either see how this works for you if you're a generator, or you see how this works in other people if you're a projector, or you see the impact it has on yourself, on others if you're a manifester, or you get to evaluate how this really works as from an objective viewpoint as a reflector. When you have enough experience of actually seeing and recognizing the patterns of the mechanics, you will see how there really is no choice. It's relative. You can only be what you are, what your imprint is. And in that comes transcendence of this chart. What you're looking at is a map of your genetic potential, a snapshot in time, one moment in time. Each of you has this one moment in time. And now I'm saying this because this is the one moment, but it's 88 degrees of the sun's movement before you were born. You have this unconscious moment as well that's brought into this, the totality, the genetic component that is you. And each of you have this capacity to move through life in a way that's either on track or off track. When you're on track, you're satisfied, or you're successful, or you're peaceful, or you're delighted with what life has to offer you. So in that space, I want to honor you for committing to yourself. My design wants to teach you from, in the material way, from what it works. There's a lot of stuff to teach you, but what it really is aware of is what works when it comes to committing to the experience. This experiment of living your design is a discovery like no other journey you've ever taken in your entire life. This experience has the ability to help you recognize your worth, your inherent value as a piece of the totality. And this experience has the ability to give you this inner truth, this recognition and awareness of what is truly valuable about you, about others, what's inspiring, what is really a good recognition of what makes us utterly and completely unique in this life. That's what this journey has in store for you. So I want to thank you for spending some time with me this morning. And please go ahead and type into the chat what questions you have. One more question, Shannon's saying, when you analyze a company, are you working with each member of the department or the leader of the department? So that would depend on what you're hired for. Technically, usually you're going to be hired by the alpha, right? The person who is in charge. And then the alpha is going to get other people on board. I've worked with small businesses where the team leader bought all of the reports that you can sell, and she bought the advanced analysis. And then I took her design, we did an overview, and we also did individual of her, what she needed to know with each of her team members and where the leadership potential was and who should be in charge of what and all of that. So that, and then how she interacted with them, like what's the most important thing for her to be aware of, which is the dynamics between their openness and their designs and also where they're compromising each other. So that's key points. I didn't work with each of her team, but she did pay for some of her team members to get analyses that I haven't done yet. So if I were to be hired by employees, and there's another one. I've worked with a small team group of people, mostly with the owner of a gym, and he's had me do analyses on him repeatedly and over again, deeper and deeper layers, and then also the profit potential of his design. And then also going into his employees and trying to put together a team, a full penta, a successful penta, based on the design of everybody in the environment. So I've done individual sessions with him too. And I have had people who are not leaders of a company come to me for individual, so just basic employees or independent contractors. And generally what happens there is I don't see anybody else at their business. It's just them on their fractal. So that's usually how it will work. And she's writing, do the leaders find it easier to direct someone who is not correct for a position, find what is right for them? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you look at the design, you're looking at the ability of that person to be satisfied or successful in that small grouping, in that team environment of working day in and day out in a group. Some people are built for it. Some people are not. Anytime you're in a small group, you get turned into a generator because you are amplifying that generator energy. So me as an example, it does not feel comfortable for me. I have to go back here. It doesn't feel comfortable for me to do that on a day-to-day basis. When I did, it would feel, I'd get exhausted and overwhelmed. So this is my job description. I remember when I got my first BG5 reading, it was like 2 years into my experiment, and I was overwhelmed by, wow, like how everything in the past of my work career made sense, made a lot more sense, and how, oh, I know now, this is my role, you know, the small group role of being somebody who's inspirational, the face of a business, who's a leader just by being an example, a creative, inspirational example. PR is my strength. So if the leader were to get the analysis of the employees, they would instantaneously be able to know where that employee fits in the hierarchy of either leading or needing to be managed, and where their job description really should be. Now that's where the problem starts to arise, or challenge, I should say. Yes, 1-8 is about empowerment. I'm here to empower people. So the challenge arises that, let's say you got somebody in PR that doesn't have anything in that channel, but that's their training. They got 30 years of experience in PR. So it becomes then, that is conditioning. And if you start to look into the cycles of that person's life, then you will see that perhaps that went through a cycle where that was part of their design. That's part of their development of their potential. Or maybe it's in their Chiron, and that's their fullest expression of their flowering of their purpose. So remember, when you're looking at these maps, it's so much more complex than you can usually handle coming into this. And that's why they break it down into 3 classes, and doing it step by step of breaking down the conditioning, giving you the time to clear up your mind of brain fog, because if you're being deeply conditioned, you're making decisions based on the conditioning, you're not thinking clearly and you're not perceiving or seeing clearly. So over time, as we take you through this process, you're going to be able to wake up to seeing things from your unique differentiated perspective and gaining a sense of clarity about what you're here for. So it's taken me to this period, this point in my experiment. I just entered my 7th year to really grasp what I'm here for, because now I have the capacity, not only brain capacity, to really hear, you know, and take this in. I wasn't this clear or able to articulate this well 7 years ago. The pictures look totally different. The frequency is totally different. I was stuck in the poor me, why me. But now that I've had all this training, analyst training will give you the ability to go into life cycles, and the ability to go into your incarnation cross, and the ability to synthesize all of that information into a coherent picture of what your life purpose is. It's not just this. This is the map for you to decide. The map for who you are over time, you know, as a life, as a purpose, as a being, is so much more complex than this. But this is the only thing that you can trust, because this is your strategy and authority, where it comes from. Does that help? Any other questions? Last call for questions, because it's about time to wrap things up and take a break. Yay, I'm so glad. You're very welcome. Thank you, thank you. And one last thing, now that I'm thinking about it, Kenneth. So for Kenneth and Veronica, who are taking the intense format, that one, we're not going to have a lot of time for questions. I'm just going to power through all the material. And if you want to come in and experiment with, you know, describing what it's like for you and doing the more touchy-feely interactive expression of this experience of rave cartography, you're going to want to audit the weekly program, which is again on Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific. And it will go for this fall. And we'll have, either way, whatever you decide to do, you're going to be able to be invited through the events tab to the upcoming study groups, which are open to everybody who's taken cartography from me. So you'll get to meet more people in the experiment and in this experience, okay? So thank you very much. Feel free to message me if you have any more questions, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.